I had been sent to Korea from my university a few years ago. They told me for my major I had to go somewhere in Asia, and my friend had really talked up Korea for me. I knew nothing about it, but I decided what the hell, and I embarked on a semester-long trip. I had only had one serious boyfriend in my life, who I had broken up with a few months prior. I also don't enjoy one-night stands, and wasn't digging the dudes at the clubs in Seoul. But I still wanted to have some sort of romantic experience, I suppose, so my friend recommended I use this dating app to meet English-speaking Koreans. That way, I could meet someone and experience the actual dating culture. I thought I'm young, so why not? I was just so eager to have new experiences. Maybe it sounds dumb to try dating in a foreign country, but it worked out for me. Eventually. Just not the first date. I met him on a dating app after being in Seoul about 3 weeks. Let's call him Tim. I still didn't know the culture or city very well, and was a bit naive about everything. He eagerly wanted to meet for a date after talking to me, and he seemed nice. I should have asked more questions, and I should have noticed that he was not giving me many details about himself. Tim was a guy a bit older than me, but claimed he was a college student. I assumed he had done his military time, all men in Korea have too, and returned to school. We talked for a bit and decided to meet for a tea date near the school I went to. He wanted to come to my dorm originally to pick me up, but I live in an all-women's dorm, and I didn't want him to know exactly where I lived since we were still strangers. So instead I insisted we meet at the main town center near the subway. He really didn't like this idea, which looking back was a red flag, but eventually he agreed. The night of the date, I waited an hour for this guy. He was very late. Tim weirdly claimed he just wanted to make me wait. I thought he was kidding and messaged him a laughing emoji, assuming he was just lost. When he finally arrived, he was much smaller than I thought, but a man's height has never been something I care about much. He was also quite thin. Maybe I let my guard down because I didn't see him as physically threatening to me, which was a mistake in the end. Right off the bat, he was way too touchy with me and breathed creepy and heavy. I was so off-put with his demeanor. I'm usually very tolerant with different personality types, but this was very odd to me. I had been told that Korean men would be polite and not so touchy on the first date. He was also dressed oddly, like in business attire for a date, but I thought that maybe it's just a Korean thing. Again, I was dumb and knew absolutely nothing about the culture. Then, the first thing he said to me was, "You're not as white as I thought you were." I thought this was a translation error, but his English was near perfect, so I asked for clarification and he said what he meant. "I thought you would be more white. Your skin is darker than I thought, and your eyes aren't as green. Are you pure European?" Now I was officially weirded out. First of all, I'm pretty much as white as you can get. I'm Irish and Scandinavian, so white as hell, basically. So the fact he thought I could have possibly been any whiter was funny. And why did he care in the first place, anyway? Why does my skin color matter to this guy? And why is he bringing it up? He said about 3 times on the date how he wished I had greener eyes, and every time I would just reply, "Well, maybe my online photos make me look brighter," and brushed it off as him being nervous and trying to start a conversation. Isn't it funny the dumb excuses you make for people when you're panicked? When we arrived at the tea place, I tried to order a basic raspberry tea, and he stopped me and told me I had to have this special tea. I thought it was weird he wanted to choose my tea for me, but in my head I brushed it off once again. He really insisted I drink only this tea type, and I just agreed. These small details become weirder later. After tea, he asked if we could look around my school. It was dark, but the school is very well lit, so I agreed. And the whole time we walked around, he would randomly stop and grab me for long hugs. At first I let it happen, but then I stopped him, and he just kept trying. He kept grabbing me and breathing hard into my neck. It was so awkward. He also would not tell me any personal details about himself. I asked so many questions, desperately trying to distract from all the awkward grabbing and to try and get to know him. But he would never tell me anything. He even said at one point, "I'm a mysterious man," like a movie line. He also said something like, "You look so much like my favorite movie character," and I asked who. But he said that I would have to figure it out on my own. Finally, he said, "I want to go to a dark area," and in my head I screamed, "Hell no." At this point, I wanted the date over fast. He somehow knew there was a wooded area behind my campus and he said we should go there. I said no, and that I wanted to stay near the main campus in town. But he kept pushing, Finally, he grabbed my arm and started dragging me there. He said, "I can't let anyone see," and I started to panic. I finally ripped my arm away and just demanded we leave and go back to the main road immediately. Looking back, I don't know why I didn't ask for help or get angry. Maybe I was scared. But I just began to book it back to the main road, and he followed. We ended up in front of a hospital near the center of town, and I told him it was time for him to go. I made some excuse, but he was pleading with me to stay. I told him we could meet the next day, and I would message him. Even though I had no intentions in doing so, I just wanted to get away at this point. I was pretending it was all okay just so he would leave. Suddenly, I think he's leaning in to kiss me, and I immediately think, "Oh God, no." But it was so much worse. Instead, I feel pain in my face. It takes me a second to realize he was biting my face. It was like a dog. I had never felt the sensation before. He leaned his head sideways and bit me on my nose and cheek as hard as he could. I screamed and pushed him away from me. His face looked so freaky, and I barely had time to react in words. Instead, I ran up the sidewalk until I saw a convenience store on the right. I ran to the back of the store and bent down to start crying. The man who owned the store started to yell at me, but I couldn't explain my situation. I just begged him in English to let me stay. I ended up having to buy a popsicle to stick around. God, I wish I had learned some Korean by then. I guess Tim didn't follow me. I peered outside the store and didn't see him. I texted a friend and waited for them to get me to take me back to my dorm. On the way, I messaged Tim and basically told him to stay away from me. I told him he was a creep, that he shouldn't bite women, and something along the lines of me calling the police, and then I blocked him. I was so scared to walk around my school area after that. I was so afraid he would find me somehow. I am so thankful I never let him pick me up at my dorm. I called my mom to tell her what happened when suddenly she said, "Wait, what did he ask you?" She then put some details together and realized that all of these weird things had to do with the 50 Shades of Grey books. At first I thought she was just being silly and overthinking a bad date. I thought she was joking, but oh God, she was right. She had recently seen the movie or read the book of something and knew the details. The eye color and way he dressed, and the tea he made me drink and the random lines he said. It all matches the books and movies for his dirty little fantasy. My mom thinks he picked me because I look like the girl in that movie to him. It explains why he was so fixated on my appearance and his whole thing with the biting and trying to dominate me. Even if it wasn't his intention, I later learned that there are some few creeps who seek out foreign girls to dominate and have sex with as like a prize. They call it riding the white horse, or something along those lines. On a happier note, this bad experience didn't stop me. I eventually met someone else in Korea, and we ended up falling in love. We even did the whole long-distance thing. And now I'm living in Korea studying and working, hoping to marry soon. So I guess I didn't let bad, creepy guys stop my life. I nervously adjusted my collar and checked my reflection in the mirror for the umpteenth time. Tonight was the night of my first date with Emily, a stunning woman I had met on an online dating app. She had an air of mystery about her that drew me in, but little did I know that this date was about to be a chilling encounter I would never forget. I arrived at the restaurant early, my heart pounding in my chest. The ambiance was warm and inviting, with soft lighting and mellow music playing in the background. As I waited anxiously at our designated table, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. A chill ran down my spine as I scanned the room, but I couldn't put my finger on what was causing my unease. Finally, Emily walked through the door, and my worries momentarily dissipated. She looked even more captivating in person, her eyes shining with a mischievous glimmer. We exchanged pleasantries, and as we settled into conversation, I noticed she seemed a bit distant, her gaze often wandering to the dimly lit corners of the restaurant. Trying to lighten the mood, I asked Emily about her interests, hoping to find some common ground. But as she spoke, her voice grew softer, almost a whisper. She began telling me stories of supernatural encounters, haunted places, and unexplained phenomena. It was as if she reveled in the macabre, and her eyes gleamed with excitement as she described the horrors. As the night progressed, Emily's tales grew darker and more terrifying. She recounted ghostly apparitions, haunted houses, and unsolved mysteries. I couldn't help but feel a shiver crawl up my spine as she detailed each chilling encounter in vivid detail. I tried to change the subject, to steer the conversation towards something lighter, but she seemed unreceptive, almost fixated on her eerie narratives. Eventually, Emily suggested we visit a nearby abandoned mansion, infamous for its haunted reputation. My heart raced at the thought, torn between fear and curiosity. Reluctantly, I agreed, hoping that it would bring an end to the unsettling atmosphere of our date. We arrived at the dilapidated building, its crumbling walls and broken windows casting eerie shadows in the moonlight. A cold breeze rustled through the overgrown garden, sending chills down my spine. As we cautiously stepped inside, the air grew heavy and oppressive, as if the house itself held a dark secret. Emily led me through the decaying hallways, her eyes gleaming with excitement. The floorboards creaked beneath our steps, and a sense of dread washed over me. We entered a room that appeared untouched by time, its walls adorned with faded portraits and tattered curtains swaying in the wind. Suddenly, a chilling gust of wind slammed the door shut, plunging us into darkness. Panic set in as I fumbled for my phone, desperate for some source of light. But before I could unlock it, I hear multiple sets of footsteps in the room. Then Emily yells,
"He's over here, get him!"
My heart is racing as I hear whoever is in the room approach me and grab my arm. I tug and try to pull away, but he's got a firm grip on me. He then takes another step closer. Adrenaline surged through my veins as I blindly take a swing at him, luckily hitting him directly in the face. I feel his grip release. I then stumbled backward to the door we entered through, desperately searching for the doorknob, just waiting for him to grab me from behind. When finally I find it, swing the door open, step out, and look back. In the dim light filtering through the open door, I could see Emily slowly backing away into the darkness, and a silhouette of the man just standing in the center of the room facing me. I froze for what felt like forever when he lunges towards me. I snap out of my trance and slam the door shut before he could reach it, then turn and run toward the nearest window, shattering the glass with a forceful kick. The shards rained down around me as I scrambled through the broken frame, propelled by pure instinct. The night air hit me like a cold slap, but I didn't stop. I sprinted away from the mansion, my heart pounding in my chest, until I was sure I was at a safe distance. Breathing heavily, I glanced back at the old mansion, its silhouette looming in the darkness. The moonlit sky cast an eerie glow on the dilapidated structure, a reminder of the horror I had just escaped. I couldn't imagine what Emily and that guy's true intentions were, or why they had lured me into that terrifying encounter. But one thing was certain. I had survived, and I will never forget that bone-chilling first date. It served as a harrowing reminder to trust my instincts, to be cautious of the unknown, and to never underestimate the darkness that may lurk behind a seemingly enchanting facade. As I walked away from that nightmarish experience, I vowed to be more vigilant in the future. The memory of that date would forever be etched in my mind, a cautionary tale to share with others. And though the encounter had left me shaken, it had also taught me the importance of resilience and the strength to overcome the darkest of terrors. First, a little about me. I work as a barista in a coffee shop inside a larger store. I am one of a handful of male baristas at my shop. I am gay and very open about this. I wear pride shoes, I have a pride flag attached to my name tag, and I have a couple of wristbands with rainbows and phrases like Orlando Strong and a local LGBT center. So, the other day I was working my shift at the register. A gentleman comes up to me and smiles. I think he noticed the pride flag on my name tag, but he didn't explicitly mention it at first. He says he doesn't know what to order and asks me for my opinion. Now, I'm not particularly a coffee drinker, but I know what drinks fit what tastes. So I ask him what he likes, and I try to give him recommendations. As I'm talking, I can tell he's paying more attention to me than to what I'm saying, which I am completely okay with. He was a shorter but well-built man, had beautiful eyes, a nice beard, basically the perfect DILF, which just means an older, attractive male. Eventually, he decides on a super sweet iced drink that we have, and I go to make it for him. As I'm making the drink, one of my coworkers leans over and whispers, "I think that customer just took a picture of you." That was a bit of a red flag, but I thanked her and kind of brushed it off. I give him his drink and he smiles. He points to the pride flag and says, "I love that flag. Where can I get one of those?" I laughed and said I got it from a pride event I went to a few years ago. He then said, "And where can I get the person it's attached to?" I immediately feel a rush and I start blushing, but trying to act professional, I brush it off. He eventually takes his drink and sits at one of the tables. I continue going out about my day, debating whether I should give in to this guy or not. Every now and then I would glance at his table to see him looking at me. No matter when I looked, it seemed like he was looking at me. I started to get that weird feeling of hard eyes with red flags. Then I noticed that he hasn't taken a single drink out of his coffee. Remember, it was an iced drink, so I could see through the clear plastic cup. When I have a break and go to wipe down some of the tables, I stop by his table and ask if he didn't like the drink. And if not, I could make him a new one free of charge. He hands me the drink and mentions he's not sure if it's too sweet for him or not, and asks me to try it. I politely decline, telling him I don't drink coffee. He's shocked and asks me why I'm working here if I don't like coffee and whatever else. As we're talking though, his questions start to change. "So, do you lift at all?" "No, not really." "Well, how much do you think you could lift if you had to?" "The job requirement is 50 pounds, so I guess at least that much." "Well, I've learned that it's good to be able to lift at least half your body weight. How much do you weigh?" Immediate red flags go off. There was something about the combination of the drink and the two questions that made me feel like I was being asked how much of a fight I'd be able to hold, especially if I was drugged. I've been drugged at a party before, and these things are red flags that I have learned to pick up on, so I kindly and quickly end the conversation and go back to cleaning up tables. As the hours go by, he continues to sit there, not drinking his drink. Other employees and a couple of managers ask if everything's okay, and he says he's perfectly happy. Every now and then, he takes a phone call, and at one point I swear I can see a guy on his phone at a different part of the store talking opposite of the guy at the table. Suddenly I start to feel like there are more eyes on me than I realize. I pull one of my managers to the back and tell him that I'm getting weirder and weirder feelings about the guy, and the manager says we'll keep an eye on him. Now I was on closing duty for this shift, and so as we got closer and closer to closing time, I noticed him still sitting there. When the announcement that the store is closing in half an hour is made, he comes up to the counter and asks if he could walk me to my car after I get off. I tell him our closing duties take us at least 45 minutes after we close, and he says he'd be happy to wait. I politely decline, and he asks when I work next. I tell him I'm off for a couple of weeks. "Well, then I feel like I should walk you to your car, especially if I might not be able to see you for a couple weeks." "No, effing way." I politely decline, and eventually he leaves. I finish my closing duties and head to the employee area. As soon as I get down there, I tell one of my managers about the situation and ask if I can take the side exit from the store. At our store, we exit out one of the main doors after we close, but there's a side door that we use to get into the building before we open, and that the managers use to get out after we close. He agrees and tells me he'd walk with me to my car to make sure I'm okay if I'm cool with waiting a little while. I am. So I walk out the side doors with a couple of managers. I get into my car, and as I'm driving away, I see a large van with extremely tinted windows parked in front of the front door. There's no way to know for sure if my customer was in that van, and if it was as ominous as I thought it was. But I know that I was not about to stay to find out, and I took a long and winding path home that night. So to the very hot guy that I sold coffee to, let's not meet again. Unless, of course, I just read all of these things wrong, and you're just socially awkward and were actually into me and not in a creepy way. But just to be on the safe side, let's not meet.
Don't skip this.